Hey everyone, this is Dr. Casey Johnson, and thank you so much for taking time to listen to the Unlock Wellness podcast. Before we get going into today's episode, I just want to tell everybody just thank you so much if you've been listening to the podcast for a bit, or even if you're new. This is episode 200, which is completely crazy to me. It's been such an amazing journey with it all, and the people that I've been able to connect with the guests and also with people reaching out on social media, it means the world. So thank you guys so much for all of the support. I'm excited for another 200 episodes, so just thank you so much. I know you're going to love today's episode with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Dr. Fuhrman is doing some incredible work. He is a pioneer in the plant-based movement, and I'm just excited to have him on to share his story and all of the work that he's doing. If you've been loving the Unlock Wellness podcast, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Also, be sure to follow me on social media to keep up with the latest podcast episodes. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. My username across the board is at Dr. Casey Johnson. That's DrKaseyJohnson. You can also check out my website at drcaseyjohnson.com. It has all of the past podcast episodes and more information about each guest under the Listen tab. While you're on my site, be sure to check out the Shop tab where you can check out my first book of my Healthy Children's Book series. Thank you again for listening. I hope this episode leaves you feeling inspired to start making positive changes to your health. Now it's time for today's episode. I hope you love my conversation with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Welcome to the Unlock Wellness podcast. I'm Dr. Casey and excited for today's guest. I'm here with Dr. Joel Fuhrman. And Dr. Fuhrman is a board-certified family physician, a 6-time New York Times best-selling author, and internationally recognized expert on nutrition and natural healing, who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional methods. And for over 25 years, Dr. Fuhrman has shown that it is possible to achieve sustainable weight loss and reverse heart disease, diabetes, and many other illnesses using smart nutrition. But I'm excited to hear Dr. Fuhrman's personal wellness journey, as well as about all of the incredible work that he's doing. So Dr. Fuhrman, thank you so much for taking time to come on.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and also just big shout out to Dr. Peter Risenon. He was a past podcast guest recently. He connected me with Dr. Fuhrman, and he's an incredible guy.
He is a very special man. Well, he spent a lot of time with me early in his career. I'm glad to have that connection and be able to have mentored him.
Yeah, he's amazing. And Dr. Fuhrman, I was thinking it was pretty crazy too, because when I was going through all of your amazing books, Eat to Live was it was the first Audible audiobook that I purchased on the app. And that was such a long time ago because I've had that app forever. It just made me laugh. Can it come full circle getting a chance to chat with you? Because that really was a start of my own personal wellness journey. So just thank you for all that you've done.
Fantastic.
And before we jump into all of your incredible work that you have done, let's start with your backstory. So first off, where you're from and what your health and wellness journey has looked like growing up and just what has really influenced your own nutritional journey.
Well, I was on the world figure skating team. I was a competitive athlete through most of my youth. But my father was overweight and sickly. And he had, arthritis and back problems and joint problems. And he started reading health and nutrition books to try to improve his health and lose weight. And he did. And so I was probably, in my teens then, or in my early teens, I started reading health and nutrition books. By the time I got to my 20s, when I had retired from amateur ice skating, I was moving into figuring what to do with my life. And I was working in my father's my family's shoe business, but I realized my real passion was in nutrition. And I went to medical school with a specific intent to become a specialist in nutritional medicine. I knew that I would, get tremendous satisfaction watching people reverse disease. So I got a taste of that you don't have to be diabetic, that asthma patients can get well, that, rheumatoid arthritis and lupus people can reverse their disease. So I got a taste through my reading and experience and exposure to this when I was young, even in my early 20s. And I thought that by getting a conventional medical education in an Ivy League medical school would help me have a better effect and a larger effect on the population and on my work. And I'm very grateful to have been blessed with this career, with so many rewarding opportunities and experiences. Just watching each person make a recovery that was suffering for so long is so tremendously satisfying. When you have a person give an example, a person on the National Renal Transplant list where their kidney function is destroyed from lupus, and they're having a horrible life on all these medications, to enable that person or to help that person totally get well and get their kidney function back and not need a kidney transplant and get rid of their lupus and make a complete recovery. Things like that are so incredibly rewarding. And, so I never expected to or had the vision of, having best-selling books and having television shows and all that stuff. Just the fact of working with people and helping them get well was enough reward for me. But the fact that I've had so much influence and gone past there has been immensely satisfying.
It's so amazing. I mean, it's so incredible that your dad had those resources for you to even check out at that time. I mean, that was so, just rewarding for you. And obviously you've been able to help so many people with their health. I mean, even going through those resources or just looking back on the resources that you were reading that your dad had got, were they heavily plant-based focused even then? Or what type of resources were you diving in at the beginning that really just caught your interest?
It was more of Dr. Herbert Shelton's work from the natural hygiene school of thought when my father started looking into that when he was, when I was still a teenager. So we did start to eat more fruits and vegetables there and cut out junk food and, start to reduce animal products. Even when I was in my teenage years, we already began changing my family's health to get healthier, mostly for my father, of course, who was, who needed it really badly.
Right. That's really great. I mean, when did you decide to go fully plant-based? How long has that been for you?
Well, I've been eating healthy most of my adult life now, really healthfully. I've always advocated a diet that was either the nutritarian diet I advocate today has always been either vegan or utilizing animal products in a very small amount, under 10%, but that's even stretching it, that's stretching it to encompass or allow people who wouldn't want to otherwise reduce it further to come into the fold and eat healthfully. But the reality is that I really strive that for people to be under 5% of calories from animal products. So the 0 to 5% range is acceptable in my work because we're not quite sure that being a vegan is advantageous for everybody. But however, now with more recent studies published this last month from the Adventist Health Study 2, comparing people who occasionally eat animal products just a few times a month to those that are completely vegan, did show increased cardiovascular death, even in eating a small amount of animal products compared to the full vegans. And most people get in trouble on a vegan diet, of course, because they're not supplementing or designing it properly. So most likely, it's a totally vegan diet with the proper use of supplements and superfoods that will allow for the most, the most extreme or most degree of slowing aging and living to be 100 years old or longer in great health. So it's most likely that a properly designed vegan diet with the right type of supplements of DHA and probably zinc and vitamin D and B12 probably affords people the opportunity to live the longest life. But, for most people, even a little bit of animal products here and there is not going to make a major factor in shortening lifespan. But as we go from we definitely see in studies around the world on long-term studies that look at hard endpoints like death, as people go from 10 to 15% or 10% to 20% of animal products as a percent of total calories, we definitely see increase in both cardiovascular deaths and cancer deaths. And that occurs even when they use those so-called naturally raised or grass-fed. It's not just any kind of even natural animal products in higher amounts still does shorten lifespan in the higher amounts. Of course, Americans eat 30%, so it's still a tremendous reduction to go down to 10%. But probably what I'm saying is you have to really get down to 5%. So in my youth, in my early years, we gradually reduced animal products to more occasional use. It wasn't until I became in recent, and even through most of my adult years, I rarely had animal products in my diet, almost an insignificant amount.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's amazing. And I love that you do put the focus on obviously the more plants, the better, right? And the more that you can diminish that, the better just for overall health. Because I mean, you look at the standard American diet and it's killing us, right? It's basically the best marketing wins. And I mean, somebody could be fully vegan, but their diet is majority processed foods, right? Oreos are vegan, all of these like super high processed, super high oily, sugary foods, but they're vegan, right? So, but that can still get you into a lot of trouble. And I actually want you to kind of touch on your book, Fast Food Genocide, because I think it's so just relevant for what we're seeing today. But do you want to talk about your book and just
Sure.
what you kind of cover and why it's so important for people to just understand the information in there? Because we are seeing like just so many health issues being caused by just the overconsumption of processed foods.
Right. Well, first, I want to say that nutritional science has made tremendous advances in the last 2 decades, and that we have the ability today to win the war on cancer, meaning we don't have to get breast and prostate and colon cancer. These cancers don't have to exist. And the answer is vegetables, and people don't like the answer. They want a magic. They're looking for a different answer. They want a magic
Yeah.
pill they can take so they can smoke 3 packs a day and not get lung cancer, or eat donuts and cookies and hot dogs and bacon and not get breast cancer.
Yep.
You're living in a fairy tale. It's never going to happen. You can't, there's not going to be any magic that's going to come and save you. If you're not going to eat healthfully, you're going to have happen to you what happens to other Americans, and that's going to get demented and get heart disease and get strokes and get cancers. We eat ourselves to death. So on one hand, we have the most unhealthy population in the history of the human race. On the other hand, we have the availability of food never before available in any living area, in any area where humans have lived before. Even the blue zones, where you have the most centenarians and longest lived people, they have the access to plant foods and to vegetables they're raising in the areas in which they live, but they don't have access to the variety of natural foods we have. In the United States, we can get green vegetables all year and wild blueberries in the frozen section, and you can have, in other words, we have, broccoli, and we have all these. We can design a dietary portfolio to be healthier than is ever before possible, and we literally can control our health destiny. And while that's happening, we have the American population is getting heavier, more diabetic, more cancer rates are still going up and up, and mostly related to obesity. And people are fed all this nonsense that they can be healthy and overweight at the same time, which is impossible, because fat cells themselves on the body are abnormal, and because they have a reduced blood supply, they produce cytokines and other inflammatory modulators that activate and increase aromatase activity, which increases estrogen production, increasing breast cancer and prostate cancer. A woman who's overweight and eating the American diet could have 10 times the estrogen concentration in breast tissue compared to a person eating right and thin. And then we're eating processed foods that have no phytochemicals or antioxidants or fibers, which are even more dangerous than animal products. People will say, the eggs are back or butter is back. Just because processed carbohydrates are more dangerous doesn't make those foods good for you. It just makes processed carbohydrates even worse. But people are still chugging down the pizza and the donuts and the bagels. They're still eating white flour and sugar and honey and maple syrup more than ever before. It's just amazing. As the science comes out telling you that these things are like cocaine that radically shorten your lifespan, it doesn't deter the American population from from consuming these dangerous substances, and they're addicting, and that's why the American population can't stop, because the calories rush into the bloodstream so rapidly that they stimulate dopamine production in the brain, and just like cocaine or just like opiates do, and eating concentrated calories like processed carbohydrates and oils becomes something people can't stop because they become addicted to, or they don't know how to stop it. And then the biggest scam ever perpetrated on the world's population is they actually convinced the current population to think that oil is healthy for them. And they start pouring straight calories, which is all oil, including olive oil, is 120 calories per tablespoon. It's put more fat on your body, and it increases your appetite because it revs up the dopamine receptors to have you want to eat more food, compared to walnuts versus walnut oil, where the walnuts actually are where the calories absorb very slowly, and you don't stimulate increased eating from them, and all the calories are not even all absorbable because some of the sterols and stanols bind fat and suck it out into the toilet bowl. So you don't even get all the fat calories out of and so it ratchets down your appetite, it suppresses appetite, whereas the oils increase appetite and make people into calorie consuming monsters. And nobody's hardly talking about it. So, but people are starting to recognize that heart disease and strokes or cancers are related to what we eat, at least, but they still don't recognize that mental illness, depression, psychosis, they still don't recognize that what we eat affects brain function, and that 100 years ago it was 1 in 100 Americans were mentally ill. Now it's 1 in 5 Americans are mentally ill. And there's a
Wow.
dose-dependent relationship between processed baked goods and fast food and depression. So that what I'm saying right now is even 2 servings a week of bagels and croissants and donuts and French fries, even 2 servings a week double your risk of developing major depression.
That's insane. And it's like quadruple that. Actually, probably more than that. I mean, that's what people are consuming on a day-in basis too. So, I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's just
That's right.
insane.
Yeah. Which is 2 servings a week, where the average American's eating 3 to 5 servings a week of those
Yeah.
things. But and the fact that the people who do not develop depression, it still affects them emotionally, intellectually, and causes dysthymia, which is a lowering of their enthusiasm about life and lowering of their creativity and problem-solving abilities. And it's so the fast food industry still has a tremendous negative effect on the intelligence and emotional well-being of the country. And nobody's talking about when somebody shoots up a nightclub or something, or a rock concert. When nobody's talking about that the mental illness being promulgated by being spread by this junk food that kids are fed. And there's a study that showed that this is a fascinating study. It showed that children who were raised with candy almost every day, or more than 1 serving a day, or once, have a 69% chance of committing a violent crime, being arrested for a violent crime by the time they're 39 years old.
Wow.
There's such an association between candy consumption and violence and criminality, more than poor parenting, lack of parenting, social isolation, or child abuse, is feeding your kid candy. So these things are destructive to our brain.
Absolutely. And just kind of on the topic of that, Dr. Fuhrman, it hurts me a lot to see the effects that it has on, like you were just talking about, how it just increases the chances for violence, but just decreasing their ability to focus in school. And then it's seen as a learning disability. And all of a sudden they're taking medications for something that they're causing themselves. And it's an extremely, extremely sad cycle.
It's insanity. And that's what, the medical profession it's based on barbaric insanity, because, we have people, this is what, I was telling my wife when she wasn't my wife, when we were just we're just meeting her, right? Starting to date. And I said, what do you want to be a doctor for? All doctors do is give poisons. We learn it. They're toxic materials to people that have abused their body with food. And what they need is to change their diet, and doctors go to a doctor and you get enabled. You get a drug to lower your blood sugar so you can still eat garbage. You get a drug to lower your blood pressure so you can still eat fried foods and salty foods. You get a drug so the doctor just becomes, not only puts toxins and drugs that cause cancer into the body, but now they're giving you the impression or the emotional and intellectual permission to keep abusing yourself. If doctors never had drugs, then they'd been forced to get people to start living healthfully, and being role models for good health. Nevertheless, so she said to me, of course, at that point, well, if you're so passionate about this, why don't you become a doctor and change things?
Love it.
So I started dating her.
And obviously you went to med school, so it worked out.
It worked out. We had 4 kids, even though the fact that she was told she had polycystic ovary syndrome and couldn't have kids. But because me informing, in educating her about how to eat right, of course, that quickly went away and she had no problem getting pregnant,
That's amazing. I love hearing stories like that. That's so incredible. And I do love how you were just talking about that, because it really does, for a lot of physicians that aren't really educating like yourself, it does give people a permission slip to not change how they're living their life. So, obviously emergency care, absolutely. But, if somebody comes into your office, Dr. Fuhrman, and their blood pressure is like deathly, obviously lower it, but then figure out what's causing it so you don't have to deal with that issue going forward. And that's where the paradigm needs to be.
Right. Because like I say to a person, diabetic, I say, you're going to control your diabetes the rest of your life and take drugs? You want to get rid of it. I say, I sit across the table and I say to them, why, if you can go to any doctor and get drugs, why come to me if you want that? People should be here because they want to totally get well and make recoveries, not take drugs the rest of their life. And then I say to them, look, if you really want to get well and drop the 40 pounds or drop the 80 pounds and get rid of your diabetes and get rid of your high blood pressure and get rid of your psoriasis, and get totally well, then I don't want you to think about what to eat. I don't want you to decide what to eat, what you think you should eat, what you like to eat, what you don't like. I just want you to eat what I tell you to eat. And I don't want to hear if you like it or not. But my job, because whatever you've done over the last years of your life, eating what you think you should eat and what you like to eat, has got you into the present problem. And I'm going to train your taste buds to have you like this stuff. And I'll guarantee you in 4 to 6 months, you'll like this as much as your old diet. And you'll be enjoying this immensely. And you wouldn't possibly consider eating any other way once you've gotten your health back. And you love these foods and these recipes, but you have to grant me the ability to show you that you'll love this if you give it some months of change. And you can't expect that to happen in the first few weeks. You're not going to love the taste of these foods, but your taste buds will get stronger. Your smell will get stronger. Your sight will improve. Your taste for sugar and salt will. So now a cashew nut will have flavor. A piece of lettuce will have some flavor to it. Things that people think have no taste. But in any case, a strawberry will be sweet. And so that, in other words, over time, the whole thing is the motivational skills, the psychological skills, the emotional training, the educational skills that we can have people learn what they need to learn to defeat these demons for their illicit love affair that they've formed between unhealthy foods in their life and when you're an addict, you're looking for excuses. The primitive brain has a million excuses it sets up why it's hard for you to change and why you can't change and why it's too difficult and too tough and too this and too that. But that's delusional, because it's not because your primitive brain who wants to maintain your addiction is not fighting for your own behalf. It's fighting for its own. It's preventing anxiety, yes, and it's against change, but it just wants to maintain the addiction. The cerebral brain, who's looking at your long-term life decades from now, has to win. And that's where we give people the tools they need to win.
I love that. And Dr. Fuhrman, how just incredibly rewarding is it for you when you're working with a patient and just they get it, right? They have that light bulb of their bodies are self-healing, their bodies are self-repairing, but it's just that we're interfering with that. And however that may be, it could be nutritionally or mindset or whatever the case may be. But I mean, how amazing is it for you when you understand that they get it and they're on the right track now to really transform their health?
Right. I mean, you're right. I mean, I've had people say to me, with rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or chronic headaches, they say to me, I'll eat sawdust to get well. Just make sure you get me well. I'll eat, and that's what I want to hear. You know what I mean? Because I know that the people that's why I opened up my retreat in California, because, so many people have trouble doing this on their own because they get this positive message from me, or they go to a health retreat for a week or two. And then they get back to their present environment and they get it's like going back into the cocaine den, all these naysayers, no support. When you have an addiction, you need support. You need somebody to emotionally support you. And, because it's difficult because it's painful to stop addiction, to come off smoking, to come off eating junk food, So just to mention my retreat in California where people stay with us for 2 to 3 months and they're no longer near their addictive triggers of junk food, and they lose their attraction for it, just like the cocaine addict doesn't want cocaine anymore. And they retrain their taste buds while they're learning all these great recipes. And we give them, of course, food psychological care and counseling for their emotional overeating difficulties. But it's amazing how the fog lifts in the brain. They become different personalities. They become more excited and joyful, and they will start laughing, and their personalities liven up, and they stop being so morose, and and they start to enjoy the food more. So it's just, you're right. It's just so satisfying to see people literally become a different person as they're gaining their health back and as they start understanding. And you know what happens to them? They actually become grateful for nature's bounty and how beautiful a persimmon or a passion fruit is. You know what I mean? Right. They start to appreciate picking food in the garden and say, look at these snow pea pods and look at all these, because they start to be able to understand what's in natural foods as far as their phytochemicals and the disease reversal potential and the lifespan giving properties, and they start to enjoy the flavor, and they recognize that how we make the recipes and make it look so beautiful on the plate, and they start to have a completely different attitude about food. Instead of complaining and what they're missing, they start to really feel grateful for what they are eating and how beautiful and how satisfying it is. It's just amazing to watch that transformation.
That is so amazing. I mean, that's incredible. And yeah, guys, please, I'm going to put a bunch of links in the show notes at the very end. We'll put a link for the Eat to Live retreat that he's talking about that he does. And please check it out. If you do check it out, just mention you heard about it on the podcast. And yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. And I've heard some amazing stories, Dr. Fuhrman, about your retreat. So definitely want to promote that on my end as well. And I mean, Dr. Fuhrman, I bet it's really cool too, because people that maybe come in for one condition and they're like, I didn't even talk about this other condition, but because their bodies are regulating and getting the right nutrition in, it's not like pick and choose, right? If you are treating the body with the right types of food, the right type of lifestyle, that takes care of, I mean, like any condition that could come up,
yes,
your body is regulating. It's not just one. Your body's not in like compartmentalized, right? It's amazing how synchronized the body is when you're doing the right things.
Right. They might have come in because of diabetes and heart disease, but they didn't tell you they had reflux and they're on Nexium and stuff for their antacids, which go away. They didn't tell you all the antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs they're taking, which, so many things get better while they're there. But the main thing is that, just to give an example, is that like take Nicole, who I interviewed and showed on my website. She was there for 5 weeks and lost 50 pounds, but she was, 400 pounds. She didn't need to lose 50 pounds. Some of these people need to lose hundreds. They need to lose 100 or 150 pounds. But the point I'm making right now is they've yo-yoed their weight for long periods of time. But now, after she left the 50 pounds, the year she left, she lost 150 extra she had to lose because they enjoy this, and they say that when they're ready to go home, they are feeling this is the way they prefer to eat for the rest of their life. They understand it. They wouldn't think of eating any other way, and they can do it now. So we've removed the obstacles that made it difficult for them in the past, so they can continue to make progress, because sometimes being there 2 and 3 months isn't necessarily got them all the way healthy yet, but it's gotten them to the place where they can take care of it on their own at this point. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, they have that like full understanding and that bigger why as well, just to take it to the next level. No, that's incredible. And you mentioned earlier just you coined that term nutritarian. So do you want to just give a brief overview of exactly what that means in relation to what you're teaching to people at the retreat or teaching your patients?
Well, I say to people that the most proven or the only proven methodology to significantly slow aging, extend human lifespan, and prevent chronic disease like cancer is moderate caloric restriction in the context of micronutrient excellence. So that's something people should write down. Moderate caloric restriction, not excessive caloric restriction, but moderate. You want to have a favorable weight. But here's the thing, is that when you achieve micronutrient excellence and you start eating high nutrient foods prepared to retain their nutrients, it naturally suppresses your appetite. So you don't desire to eat as many calories. You instinctually desire the right amount of calories to maintain your ideal weight. We don't see overweight and obese squirrels and coyotes and deer running around the woods. They don't all, unless they're in New York City and people are feeding them French fries.
Pizza in the subway. Hey, Dr. Fuhrman, just for people listening that might not fully understand when you're talking about micronutrient, can you just give like a simpler overview for if they have no idea what you're talking about?
Yes, food. There's 2 types of nutrients in food. There's macronutrients, which are calories, fat, carbohydrate, and protein. And Americans eat way too many calories. They eat too much fat, too much carbohydrate, and too much protein. At the same time, Americans are ubiquitously deficient in micronutrients, which don't contain calories, but they're vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals that we have processed out of the food. And I'm saying here that a piece of chicken is like a bagel because they're just sources of macronutrients. Whether it's olive oil, chicken, or a bagel, you're getting calories, you're getting fat, carbohydrate, and protein, but you're not getting a significant load of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, and antioxidants. And the fibers and the antioxidants and phytochemicals control your lifespan. So the more foods you eat that do not contain micronutrients, the more you shorten your lifespan. And we talked earlier on this conversation how when you eat sweets and processed grains like white flour, it's just as cancer causing as if you were eating bacon. It's not just the processed animal products and red meats that cause cancer. It's also the processed carbohydrates. So we're talking here about the American diet style. It's just ridiculously dangerous. And healthy foods can taste fantastic. So a nutritarian diet is a diet with a high micronutrient per calorie density, a lot of nutritional bang per caloric buck. And you can make these foods taste fantastic. And people like eating this way. And they feel satisfied. And they're not starving or on a diet. They're eating as much food as they desire and eating what they desire, but we've trained them to love it and to require and desire the amount of calories the body requires. When you're eating unhealthfully, you are always going to desire more calories than the body requires. It creates an unrelenting, almost monster-like attraction for excess calories. You can't control that calorie-consuming monster when you're eating junk food or when you're micronutrient deficient.
Absolutely. No, very well explained. And I know in an earlier book that you wrote, you wrote a book called Fasting and Eating for Health. So I know you're a big proponent for fasting. So how much does fasting play a role in what you teach your patients or for the retreats, or do you just use that for like specific conditions or if somebody is really in a bad place with their health?
Right. I don't recommend fasting for weight loss. Certainly not water fasting for it slows down their weight loss, makes them yo-yo. They have to learn how to eat for the rest of their life. So people who are overweight and have medical conditions, it's not appropriate for them because they need to get healthy. However, we utilize fasting with somebody like with asthma who's coming off their asthma medications over that whole 9 to 12-month period, reducing their asthma medications as they're eating right. And then as they pull the last medications and steroid inhalers away, we want them to do some fasting to make sure they don't have a flare-up, to have the anti-inflammatory effects of the fast so the body can finish detoxifying and make sure their asthma is totally gone. Sometimes I'll use fasting like that with rheumatoid arthritis as they stop their medications to start a fast so they don't flare up again. So we can utilize fasting more as a part we use in our regular life, like trying to finish dinner earlier and trying to go to bed on an empty stomach, which extends lifespan, and just using intermittent fasting or time restricted eating to try to stack our calories earlier in the day or go to bed at night when you're. The most important thing I think to people to come out of this conversation is don't go to bed on a full stomach. A tremendous lifespan extending secret is eat dinner light enough and early enough so you make sure you're not doing food in your stomach when you're going to go to sleep at night. That's the most important thing.
Got it. That's what I was going to ask you too a second ago. You were talking about intermittent fasting as well, and I was going to see if you were more for intermittent or if you were more for like somebody doing several days at a time or more longer periods for people with conditions like you said, like rheumatoid and things like that.
Correct. Exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I want to talk about too. I mean, Dr. Fuhrman, you've been on so many incredible documentaries, and I'm sure you've been super honored by that. I mean, like Vegucated, Eating You Alive, The Healing Effect, which I saw recently. That was one that I somehow missed over time, but that one's incredible.
Was I on that one?
And The Healing Effect?
Yeah. I don't know. I know I've been on a bunch of them.
I believe
so.
You've been on so many, you're forgetting your features, Dr. Fuhrman. I am pretty sure if you're listening and he's not in there, just kidding. But I'm pretty sure you are. And then Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, which is obviously an amazing one. How has being featured in so many, documentaries are changing the game with health because it's getting the word out there faster. We live in a very Netflix society right now, but it's, it can be bad and good. But on the good side, it helps get a lot of great information out there. So how has that helped you just reach more people? How has it affected the people that are just getting in contact with you and just changing so many people's lives overall?
I'm not sure, but I do know my PBS television shows have affected millions of people across America and raised awareness tremendously and raised over 35 million for public television too. So I still show them on television. I'm still planning another show for next year too. So it's been very exciting to have that opportunity. I couldn't have been more grateful for the opportunity to go into people's living rooms talking about it and people flip the TV on at night and they can't sleep, and there I am right in their face telling them they should eat healthy.
Right. What's the show that's coming up next year?
Well, I don't know the name of it yet, but the show this year was called Eat to Live. They Eat to Live on the show on PBS television this year. It was a remake of my 3 Steps to Incredible Health show from 2012. But a completely new show next year. What I'm really excited about because they're actually going to allow me to have real live people in the audience and on stage with me who've made recoveries from diseases, which is really exciting. I couldn't do that in prior
Oh, that's
shows.
awesome.
Yeah.
And that's super powerful too when people can see a story like that firsthand. I mean, stories are so powerful
Yeah.
in general. That's going to be incredible.
I know I was able to show picture of people and tell about them, but I couldn't like have the real person on stage. Now I can have the real person right on stage with me, which is really going to be cool, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. And yeah, no, I mean, and kind of like as we kind of finish up, Dr. Fuhrman, I was talking to a friend who's a registered dietitian. Shout out to Karina Walker. Give her a follow at Karina Casina if you guys are on Instagram. But she had a question she wanted me to ask you, so I told her that I would ask it. So her question was, since you have published The End of Heart Disease, have you noticed any shifts in cardiology practices and dietary recommendations? And what do you think needs to change to get therapeutic dietary changes for heart disease prevention more mainstream?
I know that there are definitely more awareness. I can't claim that I'm responsible for it. You know what I mean with my book, The End of
Right.
Disease. I know there's an overall more awareness among cardiologists and cardiology intensivists. And you know what was really cool is that I spoke at the C3 conference in Florida of cardiologist intensivists who are
That's awesome.
Wisconsin people, and they gave me an award for helping change cardiology and saving lives. You know,
Very cool.
really cool. So I'm seeing much more support from the medical profession. I don't, you know, I know that the vast majority of doctors probably never even consider this, but there's still a growing minority of people who are more into it. For certainly, that's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, I've noticed just by following different plant-based physicians on social media, I mean, how much more it just other physicians are being supportive and really can't really argue it anymore just because there's so much research coming out. And I mean, you've been a big part of in the research world as well too, right?
Yes, I have done a lot of research, done quite a bit of research, and very excited about that and the potential to do that. So that's part of my work as the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation. And I'm on faculty at Northern Arizona University. I have a research office there, and we're doing a study now there to try to look at women long term preventing breast cancer with G bombs.
That's amazing. And what exactly is G bombs?
Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. Those foods with the most scientific support for fighting common cancers that we want people to eat every day. G bombs, you know, greens, beans,
Love it.
onions, mushrooms.
Awesome. How long does the study have left, or is it completed and you guys are just finishing up like the writing process?
No, the study is ongoing, and in other words, we want it to go on for decades, like the Adventist Health Study, Nurses Health Study. We want to follow women. We want these women who join, and we have 2,500 women signed up already. We're looking to join some more who are pledging to eat this way for the rest of their life and track them over the years and produce multiple studies, multiple published articles from the data we collect from this cohort that we follow over time.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, that's going to make such an incredible difference for those patients. So, I mean, great job with that. That's amazing. And, you know, I know we just covered a bunch of things that you're working on, the retreats, but is there anything else that you are just working on in the future that you want to put out there and share that people can be keeping an eye out for?
Well, I'm working on my last book, the Nutritarian Diet, which I'm planning on being my last book. It's like when Dwayne Wade says it's a last basketball game. You know, I'm not retiring. I'm just retiring from writing so many books. It'll be my 12th book, you know, or something. So I think that
That's amazing.
I'm taking a break from writing books certainly for a while after this one. But I really think it's going to be something that's really needed to put it all together at the end here. You know what I mean?
I love it. When do you expect that to come out?
Probably not till January of next year, you know, December, January.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, when it does come out, I'll promote like crazy on my end. I'm excited to pick that up. That's extremely exciting. And no, Dr. Fuhrman, like, what is the best way for people to follow you on social media? Any websites that you have, information with the retreat, just any way people can follow you, keep up with all of the incredible work that you're doing?
Of course, and it's drfuhrman.com. drfuhrman.com. And of course, we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those things. I don't know all the handles offhand, but my daughter runs that for me.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I'll get all of those links. I'll put them all in the show notes. That way you guys can go follow Dr. Fuhrman, keep up with everything that he's doing, check out his website. Like I said, please go check out the information with the retreat. If you guys decide to go, let them know you heard it on the podcast. And also shoot me a message because I want to hear about your journey going to the retreat. And if you do the retreat, like let me know because I might have you on the podcast to talk about your experience because that would be a really cool perspective to hear. But Dr. Fuhrman, just closing question that I ask every guest. But if you just had one piece of advice for the audience, maybe it's something that's been your biggest takeaway on your wellness journey so far, but if you only had one piece of advice for the audience, what would it be?
Make salad the main dish at one meal a day. In other words, like for lunch, for example, have a giant salad with a nut and seed based dressing and a bowl of vegetable bean soup and one piece of fruit. That's your lunch. Giant salad. And you make the vegetable bean soup in the week. In other words, lunch is the most important meal of the day. Make lunch the most important meal of the day. Make it a nutritarian, super healthy lunch and have a giant salad at least once a day. And if America did that, we'd reduce healthcare costs by more than 50% and save our economy.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, that really is just incredible practical advice. And guys, tag us in your Instagram stories this week. Let's see those huge salads. I want to see you guys doing it. I'll do it myself. But no, Dr. Fuhrman, thank you again for all of your incredible work. I know you've really just influenced my own health and wellness and just so many millions more. So just thank you for all of your incredible work. And thank you for taking time to come on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, of course. Best of luck and best of health to you and, of course, your listeners.
Thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved my conversation with Dr. Fuhrman. He's doing so much positive work, so be sure to give him a follow on social media to keep up with everything that he's been working on. You can find his social media links and website that we talked about in the episode in the show notes, but you can also find them on my website as well at drkaseyjohnson.com. That's DrKaseyJohnson.com. Click on the Listen tab. Then from there, you'll be able to see all of the past guests that have come on the Unlock Wellness podcast, read a little bit about each guest, and be able to click on their social media links, websites, all of that. So all of Dr. Fuhrman's information can be found on my site as well. If you guys loved today's episode with Dr. Fuhrman, be sure to jump onto iTunes, subscribe, and write a review. It really helps me out a lot, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and support. Thank you guys so much again for tuning into today's episode. I hope you loved it. I hope it inspires you. And most importantly, I hope you take action.